Hello, welcome to another in a series of Oceans podcasts providing, or hoping to provide some insights into the weather and ocean content you can find in WeatherNet and GRIB Explorer Plus for the iPad. I'll refer to that as GE Plus for the purposes of time during our presentation. The podcasts, if you haven't seen an earlier one, take a look at a product or a product suite, discuss some of its background and key features, how to acquire it with WeatherNet or GE Plus, and then how to process it with Ocean software. So in short, how do I get the data, use the data, and interpret the data? Today's podcast takes a look at something we call NDFD data in the Everon WeatherNet library. Let's quickly grab an NDFD GRIB to give us a little frame of reference on that. You'll see here in front of you, we've got the WeatherNet portal mode screen open, the big map with our box centered on the southeast U.S., Florida, northwestern Caribbean. Over here is our content tree. I've already selected by clicking in there the NDFD 2D forecast of wind, and down here the NDFD 2-day forecast of wave height. I'll slide down, click download, and then go. And while that's coming in, I'll point you over here. See this this width size is 14 degrees. That means we're downloading a box that's about 14 degrees on its size. Not about, it's exactly 14 degrees on its size, which is a good size. Between 10 and 20 degree boxes are really good because they give you arguably enough perspective to see what the weather's coming in, but also recognize the kind of the basis of WeatherNet, that you're moving these data through a satellite connection. So you aren't really interested in spending a couple hours downloading the entire Atlantic Ocean. Anyway, when you see transfer done at the end of the transfer screen, you've pulled all your data in, WeatherNet's moved it over and stored it on your computer, and it's done its job. When you slide up to the transfer close button, click that, WeatherNet now reaches out to, in this case, GRIB Explorer, launches GRIB Explorer, and displays our NDFD data. Here we've got wind barbs, some of which are kind of hard to see given the colors we've got going on with the underlying wave height data. But we're laying wind data on top of wave height data. Over here on the right hand side, you see this is our properties bar, and it shows you at the point of the cursor what your wind speed, direction, and wave height values are. Well, what's the big deal? What's so special about NDFD data? Looks like just, GRIB data, wind data, wave data that might find in any other GRIB model. The big deal really is that it represents about a decade's worth of work by NOAA to, in effect, present some of its classical weather chart information in GRIB format. It's taking data like we see here. Let's go over and look at one of these charts. And taking all the information, all the human intelligence, everything that went into making that chart, buoy data, satellite imagery, ship reports, looks at multiple runs of GRIB models, taking that information that went into making that chart and now transforming it into a GRIB product. So that's really a beautiful thing for the ocean mariner because it's taking that experience and expertise of the marine forecaster and putting it into this neat and very handy GRIB format that you can use to layer on your nav charts or look at in GRIB Explorer, or maybe use to compare other GRIB models against. And it's generally a lot smaller than downloading a bunch of these weather charts. So it's a very exciting development that NOAA has made when we look at the information that's embodied within the NDFD outputs. There's really no other product, no other GRIB product that is like it. It does have a few quirks, one of which will slide over and pop up. One of which you see here. This is the coverage of NDFD data. Obviously, it's not a global product. Taking a glass half full approach, you see it covers the West Coast, the East Coast, Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean, the hurricane alleys in the tropical Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific, and much of the area around Alaska. But it does leave gaps between Hawaii and the U.S. continent. Heading to Alaska along BC, you've got a gap there. Much of the north and north central Atlantic is empty. So it's not perfect, but it's covering a lot of the important areas that we see people needing weather data in the offshore areas. Now, NOAA and MPC talk about their desire to keep expanding this coverage, but I think, frankly, you're probably looking at this kind of map for the foreseeable future as the index of what you'll get from NDFD. A second aspect that's a little disappointing is if I go back to WeatherNet here, NDFD does only provide wind speed, wind direction, and wave height data. Would be great to have more variables. But since it took almost a decade to get us this far, I'm just decided to be grateful for what we have. And then lastly, whereas most of your GRIB models now go out at least 7 days, the NDFD stops at 6. So let's use it. Let's see what we can do with it. We've talked about its importance, the fact that it wraps a lot of human intelligence, some real top shelf, some of the best weather people in the world. That kind of intelligence about weather is wrapped into the NDFD data and transformed into these handy little weather models. But I'm also able to use NDFD because of that fact that it's not so much a model as a transformation of these very carefully prepared and collected data sets as a means of just validating what might be going on in some of the other data, some of the other GRIB models. Are they tracking correctly today, or is this model a little off of what the NDFD might be suggesting? So let's do that. Let's use the NDFD for that purpose here in the Caribbean. I'm in WeatherNet now. I'm going to turn off my wave request and instead add the WW3 or the WaveWatch 3 global model 2-day forecast to my forecast of the NDFD data. Done that, my box is there. Press download and again go. Everyone provides the data, WeatherNet brings it back, transfer is done. So go to the close transfer icon and punch that. And now we'll see GRIB Explorer displaying here the WaveWatch 3 data and here the NDFD data. And I brought in some of the other waves. I'm going to turn the wave off just so we don't get that confused. Let's window these side by side. So we have NDFD on the left, we have WaveWatch 3 on the right. The thing we want to respect right away is let's make sure we're comparing apples to apples. You see the WaveWatch is its first frame is at 6 a.m. The NDFD is at 1800 UTC. So let's move the WaveWatch forward so that it's clicking on the same location. Now let's pick a couple points in here, and just for our analytical game that we're playing, let's compare them. Let's say we've got 75 west and 30 north in the wave watch. That's giving us a value just over 22 knots out of the northwest. What do we have at the same location over here in the NDFD? A little bit more, 23.8, but almost the same direction. Let's move here off of Florida. 25 north and 80 west. We see 15, almost 16 knots in the NDFD. And the same spot here in the Wave Watch 3, we have 14 knots. So a couple knots slower than what we have in the NDFD. Another important point is look what happens that you've all probably experienced with your Wave Watch. Wave Watch stops when it moves inshore. The model doesn't model any farther inshore, whereas the NDFD data models that entire area. Even with the wave information, let's turn wave back on so I can show you that. To turn on or off GRIB variables that you've downloaded, you right-click in the chart, choose Weather Products, and then check or uncheck the value you might be looking at. It's live. Oh, I had to make sure I was in the right frame. There we go. Okay, you always want to make sure you've clicked on the right frame when you're trying to show that to people. See how tight the NDFD wave data, the wave forecasts go into the shore? We could download, in fact, I'll do that for you. That's the best way to approach it. Let's just download the Wave Watch 3 wave forecast real quick. Look at the difference. Here's your Wave Watch 3 wave forecast, the color. Look at the gaps that model leaves, shoreside. Those gaps are absent in the NDFD data. And that's a real important feature that shouldn't be overlooked. But let's go back. Let's turn off things. Let's focus again on the wind. Notice the Wave Watch does give you things like wave direction and wave period, which you're not going to get out of the NDFD. It only is giving you wave height. So what's our conclusion? What do we think? It looks like we're a couple knots different in most of these areas. Let's go down here way in the Southern Caribbean. We're looking at 8 knots down here. We're looking at, so in general, it looks like the wind speeds that we're finding in WW3 are a knot or two different than the wind speeds we're finding in NDFD. 24 knots there at 75 and 30, 20 knots at 75 and 30. So that's a 20% difference. Down here in NDFD, we're seeing 14 knots. We're seeing a little under 12 knots there. Wind direction, very, very similar. But wind speeds in the NDFD appear to be a little higher than what the Wave Watch model is forecasting for us. course, you've got a whole suite of other information, other tools available for you. We've shown you the properties bar or the windowing feature. We have also got tools like the horizontal profiler in GRIB Explorer. Here we can take, let's close this out and just focus on the Ndf D Data now. Horizontal profiler paints us a run line. We can grab and move either end of that line, and then the wind and data underneath that line is graphed for us here in this chart. We can use that to perhaps evaluate a course we're thinking about. You can use it as a radar sweep to kind of look at the scope of wind and, of course, any other variable you might be looking at here. Data through the arc of your sweep. So it's a real handy tool. The vertical profiler takes a totally different look at things, whereas the horizontal profiler looked across space within a given time. The vertical profiler looks at a single point, looks through all the frames of the data that you've downloaded, and gives you a profile of wind speed and wind direction at the point of the cursor through that set of frames, through that time. If I move my cursor around, I'll see that graph fluctuating, and then on the right hand side of it are the wind direction and the barbs. 3D chart, the means of getting a real graphical look at the data, where you might see peaks and valleys that may be less obvious in just a flat view of the Earth. Frankly, it's used a lot with surface current and sea temperature and that sort of data. I've seen it in surface pressure. I've seen it used less in these kind of applications with wind speed. We've got the animation tool up here in the upper right, the video kind of icons that we're all familiar with. This stop, the go, pause, move to the end, you can move frame by frame. All of those are valid to you. And then, of course, you've got the temperature palette. So you've got your color palette here that gives you a quick view visually of the wind field in front of you and relates that to the colors that are in the palette. So you can get a pretty quick idea, as we saw in the very first frame, that the northeast corner of our download shows some pretty heavy winds in the first in this first few frames. The dark reds are represented there, whereas you slow down into greens and gentle blues as you move through the Caribbean. Okay, let's go back to the beginning and now see how we can find WeatherNet Ndf D Data in WeatherNet and then in GRIB Explorer Plus for the iPad. We'll start with the portal mode, which is the WeatherNet main screen and probably the most popular WeatherNet mode. In the upper left-hand corner is the launch wizard, which you can pop to then page screen by screen through our content wizard and grab specific types of data. Or we have this row of icons here, which are given, let you go straight to different types of information. For example, here, very first one is the one I'm interested for this presentation. That's our GRIB weather page. I've already selected wind and wave in there. right now I'll turn off wave. And then here, this is real important. You have the opportunity to determine, how many days of coverage do you want? Remembering that NDFD goes out only as far as 6 days. So let's change it to 3 days. Finish returns me to the portal mode main screen. The first thing I usually then do is make sure I'm painting the box on the map for where I want my data. Let's move it around a little bit. So I'm going to change my map view by clicking down here in the lower right. And then let's box an area up along the west coast of the US. All right. Once I've done that, I'm going over here and clicking on the GRIB wind wave area, and then my NDFD information. One thing we haven't talked about at all yet is the fact that we have 2 flavors of NDFD in the WeatherNet library. What we've been looking at so far is our NDFD high-res data. That's at a spatial resolution of 0.125 degrees, or 8 data points per degree. NDFD fast information is resampled to a resolution of 0.25 degrees, or 4 data points in a single degree. What's that mean to me for a satellite user paying for airtime? Well, a 10 by 10 block of the NDFD high-res data will take about 4 minutes to download over an Iridium connection. That same block of the world, but now using NDFD fast, will take just a minute and a half. So when you're offshore, really think about using the NDFD fast data to cut down your transfer times. Then if you do see something that worries you, you can move right back into WeatherNet and grab the higher resolution piece for that area. Or of course, if you're sitting in the marina or on the moorage and you've got Wi-Fi access, definitely grab that higher resolution stuff. But let's take the NDFD fast for this example. I've moved my box to where I want it. I'm going to click the download and then go. Transfer's done. I'm going to close with the transfer icon. WeatherNet launches, GRIB Explorer, and there's our data. And this is a good example. So remember that map we looked at early on in today's presentation that showed kind of that spotty coverage of the NDFD? Well, here's how the data is then presented to you given that reality. This is our block of the West Coast NDFD data. And if you remember, NDFD stopped as you moved through BC waters, Canadian waters up towards southeast Alaska. It also stops at about 134, 133 degrees west. So we see that indeed the data just ends. Hopefully NOAA will keep expanding and increasing the coverage area as we go through time for these data. But that's what we have to work with right now. All right, so portal mode, go to the wizard, select wind or wind and wave, click your products and pull in the box. It's very straightforward. But we can also grab NDFD data from library mode. Library mode contains the entire WeatherNet library. It's everything from buoy data to satellite imagery to tides to ocean charts, radar, everything is there and available for us. It's separated into 3 sections. The upper left is the actual library with category. There are category folders. And we have topics or types of data. And then really can drill all the way down to the specific content that you might want. The area in the upper right is something we call the batch mode. It's sort of my library cart. It organizes the books that I might have pulled out of the library here into the groups that make sense to me, types of data, trips I'm going to make, periods of time, and so forth. I can use it to organize that information however it's meaningful to me. And then this big area at the bottom is the detail section. It shows me what's actually in any of the groups I might make and then highlight up here in the batch section. So to pull NDFD data from library mode, I first go up into the batch area and I create a new batch name. Click on the words new batch. Gives me a new batch screen to work with. Let's just keep it simple and give this batch the name NDFD. Really don't have to do anything else on this screen other than give it a batch name. Come down and check on the OK. You'll see I now have a little green check mark on that NDFD folder or batch. That's very important. Only data in batches that have a green check mark are going to be downloaded. You may have 20 different batches. All of them have X's on them except for one. Only the one that you have that green check mark is actually going to contain data that you'll be able to download. Now, how do we add data from our library, books from over here, and bring them into our library card? Well, we go in, we know that the NDFD data is in the GRIB wind wave folder, and then probably in the NDFD vector area. And in this case, I want to get some wind data. So let's expand that. Here we have our 2 flavors, NDFD fast and NDFD high res. Let's just grab the 3-day from here. So I click on it, hold down, and then in this case, I'm going to just drag it over here on top of this folder that I just made. And then let go. And you see now that file is down there in my details section for that batch. The other way, instead of dragging it up and over the top of the folder, is to actually just drag it right down. Let's expand waves, and let's grab 3-day waves. Just drag it straight into my details section if I've already highlighted the folder that I want to use. Boom, and then just release it into there. So I've got a green check mark on my NDFD folder. I have 2 files in that folder that I want to retrieve, and I have check marks on both of those. If I only wanted to get one of those, if I only wanted to get wind data, I can just uncheck the wave. I'm still going to get wind because I've got the green check up there, and I'm ready to go. So let's move up to the Start Transfer icon, this little down pointing arrow at the top of the screen. Click that, and it takes us to our file transfer page. It's on this page in library mode that we now box the area of the world that we're interested in. In portal mode, you're doing it kind of side by side. You've got the map sitting right there, you've selected your content, and they're really visually connected to one another. Library mode, you're taking the books off the library shelves first, and now you're telling at this stage where in the world you want them to relate to. So I click on map. If I don't like the box that I've got there, I click change view down here. And then I'm going to go and box the Gulf of Mexico this time. I just move my cursor to the kind of an upper left corner of an expected square I'm interested in, drag down and to the right and form my box. And again, don't make it too big. Stick to that 10 to 20 degree frame. And then let go. And what do we got? We have an 18 degree box here now, covering the Gulf of Mexico and parts south. I'm happy with that. Press OK. Takes me back to the transfer screen, and I'm ready to go. Before I hit go, though, I just want to point out another way to do that whole process is just to enter in a latitude and a longitude here, and a box width. That long value is going to be the center of the box, and then the width and height dimensions are referenced here. So you know exactly where you want the data for. You don't need to go to the map. You can just point it out manually by entering in your location and size. Anyway, let's hit go. WeatherNet goes out and reaches to the server, transfers it to my desktop, breaks my connection to the satellite phone. I don't keep burning airtime. WeatherNet takes care of that for me. And then when I click close transfer, as we've seen, it launches GRIB Explorer and automatically displays the data. So that shows us how we can get NDFD data in WeatherNet through the portal mode or through library mode. But we can also do it, grab these data using our GE Plus iPad product as well. And let's go and run through that real quick as well. Okay, here we're looking at my iPad, and in the upper left-hand corner, our launch icon for GRIB Explorer Plus, which of course you can get off of the Apple App Store. A tap on the icon launches GRIB Explorer. It loads into a very vanilla main screen. But down at the bottom there's 4 different icons there, one of which says Select GRIBs. And if I'm interested in pulling GRIB data to me to look at, that's what I want to tap now. So one tap there, and I'm presented a screen that gives me a layout of the different types of ways to get the data, where it's for, and what it is. We'll start at the top with the communication method. I am going to leave it on direct connection for the purposes of this presentation, but I'm going to show you that if I now go in there and then tap on direct connection, you're going to see a range of other devices appear, show you all the different compatibilities that does GRIB Explorer Plus have in the satellite phone business, plus all of our different sidekicks in their Wi-Fi, the satellite Wi-Fi router that we sell as the sidekick. I'll leave it on direct connect, press done, and then done again. Go back to the main screen. Forecast duration, i.e. the period of time that we want data for. I can change that by tapping on the number of days that's presently there, which is 4 days. I'll just tap on that. Remembering that Ndf D Data is from 1 through 6 days. So let's just move it back to 2 days and press done. The geographic region is next. I'll click on select from map. Here you see the world map, which I can move around by putting my finger anywhere on the map, pressing down and just kind of pushing it around. I can change the size of my little target box by grabbing any one of its corners and just moving that down or left or right. And then I can even move my box around by putting my finger inside of the box and then just pulling it or pushing it, as you might prefer, to the location I'm interested in. All right, let's stick with this area off Baja, and then tap Done to close the map screen. Now I'm at the point of actually picking the weather data that I'm interested in. I first want to tell GE Plus the general category of GRIB information. So I tap on Select GRIBs. Excuse me. What I'm interested in is ocean wind data. So I do not want global wind. Ndf D data is located under the ocean wind or ocean wave categories. All right, and then I will press Done. I'm done with that. And so I've now told the category I'm interested in. I have to actually tell it the specific file that I want. So I'll tap on Data Source, and you see I've selected NDFD High Res. That's great. Let's just leave that alone. If I wanted the fast, I could tap that. What's neat about GRIB Export Plus is that if, say, I wanted some WaveWatch data at the same time, I could select that, or maybe some of the ASCAT data. By the way, we have a video describing that information and how to use it and get it as well. That's on our support page and in our video library. But anyway, for now, I just want to focus on NDFD. And then done. All right. Well, let's look at something here. Look at the estimated size of that file. 254K, 33 degrees. The geographic region extends in the north-south direction from 33.5 north to 14.4 north, so about 19 degrees. A box size that's 19 by 19. Let's change that. Watch our file size change. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's drag it in here. Press Done. So we've dropped now to 127K. 32.9 minus 19.5 is roughly what? Just over 13 by 13. So we've gone from 19 by 19 to 13 by 13 and dropped our file size in half. The other effect on file size is the type of NDFD that we're actually asking for. Let's go back in here now. Let's tap on Data Source and change from the NDFD Fast to the NDFD High Res. Press Done. Look at the difference. Jump from 127K all the way up to 420 kilobytes. So again, an awesome way to remind ourselves of the difference that it makes whether you're using the high-res data, which is about 8 data points per degree, or the low-res data, which is about 4 data points. All right, so we've told it what we're going to use to download, how long, a number of days we want the data for, the area of the world we want, and specifically the data that we want. We're ready to go ahead and download now. So let's do that. I move up to the top of the screen and tap the download button. GE Plus reaches out on that preferred connection, auto dials through the satellite phone if it is a satellite phone or a sidekick, downloads the data, closes the connection up, and then flips the screen over and displays the data to you all in kind of one fell swoop. As you can see, this is some pretty exciting data from a spatial resolution perspective, not to mention everything else we've talked about it earlier in the demo. I can go up here in the upper right corner and tap my play video icon, and you'll see the winds now are put in motion. I have all the other tools available as well. This little cursor with the finger lets me move around, and there's a target there you may be able to see. It's kind of subtle. that tells me the Latin lawn, the distance from wherever my quote boat is, and the bearing from that boat, as well as the wind speed and direction underneath that target. I have a nice little palette here that relates the colors of the wind that I see in the field of view to the colors on that palette and their associated speeds, which tells me I got some higher speeds over here, just southwest of San Diego and the U.S.-Mexico border, while up in the Sea of Cortez itself, it looks pretty tranquil right now. Speeds under 10 knots and even just a couple knots up there in the northern Sea of Cortez. We have tools. This little icon just to the left of the globe shows you some of the tools available. Different names for some of the same things we saw earlier in Grid Explorer. The route finder is similar to a little bit more enhanced version of our horizontal profiler. But you see the A to B point, which I can move either end, change the location of the line, and then my graph down here shows me the wind values underneath that line, and then the speed represented in the barbs above the line or above the graph. Close that out, go back up here to my tools menu and click time profile. Here now I'm taking my little finger pointer and moving that around, and I'm seeing the wind speed and direction under that pointer, looking through all the time frames that I have downloaded in this GRIB. I can then see in one quick view what's happening to wind through time for a given location, moving that across an anticipated route you're seeing, to give you a really just a real journeyman's ability to quickly assess what's going to be happening with wind data. Are we going to be spiking? Are we going to be shifting a lot over the course of the next, in this case, couple of days? And then lastly is a product unique to Grid Explorer called the Trip Planner, which tries to combine what we're doing in the time profiler and route planner into one chart by again giving you an A to B line, but in this case, showing you the wind speed and direction through time and across space underneath that line. Spend some time with this. You can use it to kind of carve out a path for yourself through the wind data that you're going to see in the next couple of days that might be either faster or more comfortable to you depending upon your interests. And so that's it. Not only Grid Explorer Plus, it's how you download the data, how you pick the data you want, how you get the regions identified, but then a really brief overview on some of the tools available for you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you've got any questions, of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us here at OCENS, and we thank you very much for your time. Take care.